on the eve of our first democratic elections, I was approached by the ruling party, given my influence in the community and so on, to avail myself of political office. But through God's grace, I completed two successive, and I've grown tremendously, not having known a debit from a credit. I had to learn the language of money and so on. And for that matter, I had to go to places like Harvard University during the off seasons, a London School of Economics. December, London is cold, and spending time there, learning all these things. And he checked with the presidency, they are earmarking me to become the chair. Only when I got to grips with what is I'm up to here, I realized I'm actually presiding over a fund of 920 billion rand. By then, it was the seventh biggest pension fund in the world. Now, imagine, he's the same guy that the other day didn't know a debit from a credit. But when I left the Northwest, my last budget was 23 billion rand. It's a big jump, from 23 billion to over 900 billion rand. Now, talk about faith. I really needed faith for that. And I tell you, Mikal, it was such great fun, these big American policemen, they're guarding the New York Stock Exchange. The officer, I'm here to see the Secretary General of the United Nations. I've got a meeting on with Kofi Annan.
Welcome to the Success Equation podcast. Today we have an awesome guest. He has so much of experience, so much to teach us. So get your notepads out because it's going to be good. Now, I'm not going to introduce him. I'm going to let him do that for himself. So hold on. We've got something special for you. The timestamps for each question are displayed right now on your screen and listed in the video description. So if you're curious about a specific topic or just want to skip ahead, feel free to check them out. Let's dive right into the magic of this episode. So, who are you? What do you do? And what is your mission?
Hi, thanks very much, Mikal, for having me on your show here today. My name is Martin Kuscus. I come from a place called Klerksdorp, out there in the Northwest Province, and I'm currently staying in Arabiespoor. But I grew up from very impoverished environments. Those days, I'm talking now many decades ago, I'm sure my beard gives my age away, the color of my beard gives my age away, but options were quite limited those days. It's a big struggle where we lived, and I always had destiny on my mind. Leadership just came so natural. I was always a monitor in class, or a captain of this, or whatever the case might be. But the other thing as well, I thrive on knowledge. I was very good at my schoolwork and so on, and that gave me a head start. Went to University of Western Cape. I wanted to be a teacher all my life. And I didn't complete university, dropped out the first year, not because of academic reasons. It was because of something else that happened at home, being the eldest. I therefore decided to carry the load with my mom and, to carry the family through that hump. And then I joined the nursing profession. After having a short stint in industry for about 2 years, I landed up in the nursing profession. Mikal, I was actually a nurse for 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I know how to make beds, a dream that I had. I then became a lecturer for 7 years at the nursing college, teaching nursing students there and so on. And then I moved into management. Two very important milestones happened during my nursing stint. The one was on the 7th of July, I remember very well, 1979, Ward 7, night duty.
Sure.
I was working there with another colleague of mine, and she was my senior. And we used to work for 7 nights in and 7 nights out.
Sure.
And when this was 7 nights off, it became the longest 7 nights of my life. Because all of a sudden, I realized something happened within the inside of me. That's something where you just smile when you're all by yourself. And you get excited when you hear Roberta Flack singing that song the first time ever I saw your face. You know, those sort of things. Yeah. And when my colleague came back and we worked again the next 7 nights, I just plucked up the courage and approached her and said what I was feeling in my heart. I was flatly refused.
Sure.
I'm a bit of a notorious guy. But I persisted. And yes, ultimately we worked off, and on the 4th of December 1981, we got married. And yes, we're almost now 42 years married.
Wow.
And blessed with 3 children. The second milestone that also happened in my nursing profession is that on the 10th of October 1982, you know, after having been in it was basically at some stage my uniform that separated me from the drunkard out there.
Sure.
I was very notorious when it comes to drinking and those sort of things, but I was good at my job. I looked so dignified, you know, but when I take off that uniform, dancing on the table used to be my favorite pastime, you know, when let's get it on, you know, that Marvin Gaye songs and those kind of things. But on that day, on that Sunday night of the 10th of October 1982, I went to a church service. And the message came through that evening, so persuasive, so compelling, and such a true reflection of the state of my life by then. And when the call was made for people, you know, to get their lives in order again with God, I didn't hesitate. I was the first one to raise my hand, and I walked to the front. And I tell you, Mikal, and I'm not propagating perfectionism here, but from that day onwards, my life has not been the same.
Sure.
Instead of my life going down, I started progressing in my career, got promotions, and moved to the top into management and so on.
Wow.
But in my community, I became a respected individual, very much active in social activities there, and became a very, very, very exemplary leader in my community. So much so that came 1993, on the eve of our first democratic elections, I was approached by the ruling party, given my influence in the community and so on, to avail myself of political office. Well, I consulted with my spiritual leader by that time, after some soul searching and so on, I consented to go into politics.
Sure.
I ended up in the Northwest Provincial Legislature in 1994, and in a matter of 4 days, my life just turned around. We were sworn in the Saturday, and the next week, Tuesday, the Premier by then was Papa Malefe. He called us all into one room. Long story about the new province that we must establish, the challenges and so on. And then he announced his team, his first cabinet that must help him now to take the task forward. Now, certain names are predictable. I mean, these are guys with impressive struggle credentials and so on. And I was just small little activist and this, that was just having a heart for people.
Yeah.
But when he read number 7, he said the finance portfolio will go to Martin Kuscus.
Sure.
My head went into a spin. I hardly heard the last 3 names. I had to ask the lady next to my colleagues next to me and say, by the way, what were the last 3 names? And imagine, Mikal, I didn't even know a debit from a credit. Now called to manage 4.2 billion rand.
Sure. Wow.
My life just changed like that. It was arguably one of the biggest shifts in my life.
Wow.
But a very challenging shift as well because, my life changed. I became public property. Certain things, the public dictated where I should go, what I should do, what I shouldn't do, all manner of things. But I survived 10 years then, 2 successive terms. And I still hold a distinction in this country with my former colleague from Gauteng, Jabu Maleketi, as the longest serving MECs of finance in this country. Heads were rolling all over the place, But through God's grace, I completed 2 successive, and I've grown tremendously, not having known a debit from a credit. I had to learn the language of money and so on. And for that matter, I had to go to places like Harvard University during the off seasons, London School of Economics. December, London is cold, and spending time there, learning all these things. And yes, but when your name appears at the golf club as an honorary member, then you know your time is up. Don't play golf Wednesdays and Saturdays. Because it became a bit of a maintenance job. Good people, a good management team, the systems were running well, and the controls were in place and so on. It was almost becoming a ceremonial thing. It's a big budget speech. And after that, I must just make sure that the money doesn't get lost in people's pockets. And so, and it's spent in the manner for which it is intended, And I then exited politics, and I didn't even know by that time where I'm going. But I ended up at the South African Bureau of Standards. Sure. There I had to reinvent myself again. Because when I arrived there, there were just a lot of clever people with these white coat scientists, and it was one of the premier scientific institutions in South Africa by that time. The place was in a mess. Just to give you a sense, when I walked in just 2 weeks before I arrived there, there was a nasty accident that happened there. A guy lost his disciplinary hearing in the labor court appeal. Came back, and during the HR clearance process, nobody knew that he had a gun. People thought that he's coming to collect his stuff there. Went into the office, he shot his supervisor, and had the gun on himself. He died first, the lady died too. Now, 10 days after that, I walked into that place. And it almost raised this question, is this a champagne glass or is it a poison chalice?
Sure. Yeah.
Because I was feeling so elated getting this position, and now all of a sudden I realized, haven't I been set up here? So I climbed into that situation. Because, I'm not a maintenance guy. That's why I left politics by then. I like to fix things. I like to turn stuff around, get them onto high-performance culture and so on. And we fixed that place in 5 years' time, so much so that I was actually elected into the ISO Council for a 2-year term. Now, the ISO is the highest highest authority on industrial standards in the world. I used to fly to Geneva at least 5 times a year, as if I'm jumping on a taxi. And go and sit with all these clever people and how we must, facilitate world trade and standardization, all those sort of things. We also extended our footprint into 19 countries. As a matter of fact, my last assignment was to establish for us a branch in Shanghai, in China, because there's a lot of trade, that came through. Those were the days also with this big cement demand in South Africa for the stadiums and so on. So we had to do pre-export verification there before it gets into our country. But it was a crazy 5 years. Besides my full-time job as the CEO of the South African Bureau of Standards, I was also appointed by the President on the Finance and Fiscal Commission for a 5-year term. I was a part-time commissioner there.
Sure.
Then I was in Nagoya, Japan in 1996. I got a call from the then Minister of Finance, Trevor Manuel. And he phoned, he said, "Hey, Martin, I was looking for you the whole weekend." I said, "No, I was on flights in different time zones." And he told me that they're going to establish the first board of trustees for the Government Employee Pension Fund. And he checked with the presidency. They are earmarking me to become the chair. Well, I went through the process and, first meeting, elected as the chair. And only when I got to grips with what I'm up to here, I realized I'm actually presiding over a fund of 920 billion rand.
Wow.
By then, it was the 7th biggest pension fund in the world.
Sure.
Now, imagine, he's the same guy that the other day didn't know a debit from a credit, that to learn and reinvent himself into a financial whiskey there as an MEC of finance. But when I left the Northwest, my last budget was 23 billion rand.
Sure.
It's a big jump, from 23 billion to over 900 billion rand, Now talk about faith. I really needed faith for that.
Yeah.
Because, so many people, about 1.2 million civil servants, life savings, pensions, are under our care, so wanted to be very careful.
Wow.
I also, got involved in international, beside the ISO. I became part of the United Nations Principles on Responsible Investment.
Wow.
That was also a nice, and significantly so on the 27th of April, I was invited to the New York Stock Exchange by the then Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, where he launched at the New York Stock Exchange the United Nations Principles on Responsible Investments, ESG, looking at environmental integrity, looking at good, at the social equity, and looking at good governance. And these are the key drivers now that inform investment decisions in the world. And I was one of 27 signatories.
Sure.
Not because I was African. I was there because we were the 7th largest pension fund in the world.
Wow.
That was my ticket to the game. And I tell you, Mikal, it was such great fun. These big American policemen guarding the New York Stock Exchange. Then I'm here to see the Secretary General of the United Nations. I've got a meeting on with Kofi Annan. My little bag at the door. As this big policeman escort me, the door is just I had my little taste of power and authority that day.
Sure.
At the heartthrob of the capital, of the financial capital of the world in New York. And a few weeks after that, I got an invite to join the board of the first board of the United Nations Principles on Responsible Investment. So much so that I got invited on the 8th of June, the 9th of June 2008, to participate in a debate in the United Nations General Assembly. It was a debate on a thematic debate on global capital and climate change. And we were 5 panelists, each one representing a different segment of the financial service. One for private equity, there was an insurance guy from Allianz, and then man spoken about of all the pension funds in the world. Now, Mikal, I flew for 18 hours, but I only spoke for 12 minutes. But my friend, you can go and check with your friend Google. I was there. It's on the record. I was there.
Sure.
But a nice part, after all the questions and discussions and interactions with these ambassadors and so on, when we left, we had a working lunch with the new secretary. By then, he was the new Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon. And we had a working lunch. He addressed us there. And as he walked out, he came to greet all the speakers and thank us. But those guys are so well informed. Now, when he got to me, he shook my hand. He said, "I believe you're from South Africa." And it was so cute, But when I looked at his tie, we had identical ties on, blue Daniel ties. You dare ever accusing me for having poor dress sense, Mikal. I've got photos to prove. I was up to the standard of the Ban Ki-moons in my days.
Sure.
I walked out of there, and in the busy streets of New York, I started just having this internal conversation with God, saying, what's up here? I can't handle these surprises anymore. If it's not this position, it's that responsibility, if this assignment and so on. What's the game plan here? Now, just a few months before that, I attended a conference at our church in Randburg, and some of the world's top speakers were there. But I just remember one statement that was made in that conference. It stuck with me for the rest of my life. And as I was having all these internal conversations, that statement came back. Where Jensen Franklin said, God only blesses where his reputation is safe.
Sure.
And as if I'm reminded, if I walk straight, if I don't, as a Christian, start bringing God's reputation in disrepute. It is, for lack of a better description, by some foolish stuff, and my name is scandalized all over the place. That well-known Christian business leader, look what he has done, and so on. If I stay away from those things, I'll be entrusted with greater responsibilities. And I just got hold of that. And it just, it was just so profound for me to hear it again talking, that inner voice talking to me right in the busy streets. And then inform my life for the greater part of my corporate life and so on. But Mikal, when my contract finished at the SABS, and this jet set life every second, third week on a plane to something, and from time to time just hook my wife on like a Fanta trailer, tagging along with me. I decided, 32 years in government is enough, and then I launched out into corporates. I started joining boards of listed companies. I just, in December, finished a 14-year stint with the Netcare Group.
Sure.
Then I left GPF, the Government Employee Pension Fund. I went to the Mine Workers Provident Fund, from there to Liberty. And now currently I'm serving on boards of two JSE listed companies. The one is Alice Holdings, and the one is Mahube Infrastructure, where we're heavy into renewables and dosing. And a little bit of things on my own, where that keeps, that takes care of the petrol and the electricity, which is becoming very expensive now. But that's Martin in a nutshell. Married for 42 years, as I said, to a wonderful wife, Elizabeth, and we're blessed with 3 children. They're no more children, 2 of them, the 2 girls are abroad, and I've got a son. So we're now in the empty nest phase.
Sure. So how would you say, so you oversaw the 7th largest pension fund in the world, worth over 920 billion rand. How would you say being in charge of that amount of money has changed your perspective of money?
Well, I grew into that situation. You see, I had to start appreciating the value of money with my paycheck first. How I apply my mind and it wasn't a big salary being a student nurse, okay? It was 120 rand per month.
Wow.
And then certain months, half of it will go into books when we go to college and so on. But it was a question of how do I apply my mind and appreciate the value of 120 rand first? Because you can't manage 120 rand, the 120 million will also go to waste. Over the years, I kind of had to learn how to apply my mind. Now, I'm so fortunate. I'm married to a woman who actually is very good at that. Because, a few rands makes me excited at times, but my wife is very prudent. She's more the prudent one and so on. And she's like the CFO and I'm the CEO of the business. And I look at the broad strategy issues, but the day-to-day things she takes care of. So one, you must appreciate the value of money first. Because if you don't appreciate the value of money, money promises which it cannot yield. You'll have 1 million rand in your pockets, and then you only discover 1 million rand can't even buy a house. Can't even buy one of these German saloons, Then you into your pockets, if only I have 10 million rand, And you start chasing this thing. So you need to appreciate the value of money. Secondly, it's also about stewardship. It's not your money.
Sure.
You're just a steward. Even the salary that you earn, it's not your money. There's somebody that gave you the health and the wisdom and so on to create that and created that opportunity for you. So you need to spend it wisely so that, to some extent you can also live in an overflow to touch the lives of other people.
Sure. That's good.
So it's about appreciating the value of money. It's also, secondly, about, see this whole thing as stewardship. And thirdly, also be ruthless when it comes to execution.
Sure.
The error margin is so slow, so little, One mistake can put
Sure.
a country backwards. One mistake can put a family backwards. So you need to be ruthless, in implementation. Once you've decided on a specific route, there shouldn't be a sale or a bargain or whatever that distract you from there. So it's about focus, and ruthless in executing that.
Sure. Wow, that's good. So being both a father and a husband, how did you manage to find balance between growing your career and focusing on your family? Because I think, today with so many young professionals, they all get hyper fixated on, I want to grow my career, but they end up forgetting their family. How did you find that balance?
Yeah, there was a big challenge initially. I don't think, should I call it a strength or a weakness, but once I set my mind on something, I go for it with all my heart.
Sure.
And, at the beginning of my political life, the children were quite small. My eldest daughter was just entering high school. My boy was still in primary, and the little girl was still in pre-primary. And I was so busy, establishing myself in politics and this new leadership role and so on. At some stage, I just discovered that the shirt that I was looking for is no more in the cupboard. Somebody else is wearing it in the house, Those those days, baggy pants and long shirts, My son Ezra started to help himself, The aftershave all of a sudden got finished quicker than I thought, And my boy just grew up overnight. He was a young man.
Mm-hmm.
My girl, overnight, she was a young girl, And I told myself, I mustn't make the same mistake. There's a nice gap of 7 years between my second born and the last born. I mustn't make the same mistake that I've done with the first two. And with Zoe, I made a conscious effort. Even if it's a small little concert of the school, and she's only for 2-3 minutes on the stage, I will be there with my VHS, remember those? And record those strategic moments because my ballerina is on the stage, because balance almost work like a four-legged chair, If one of the legs are cut off, you're going to sit uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And if you sit like that for prolonged periods of time, over a few months or so, you're going to have serious back problems. Mm-hmm. And therefore, you need to find balance. My four-legged chairs consist out of family, it consists out of my faith, it consists out of my faith life, it consists out of my professional life, it consists out of my community life. Now, if you are too involved in the community, tonight it's Community Police Forum. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow is the SGB. Mm-hmm. People will give you titles there and all sort of things. Yeah. But we all have 24 hours in a day. Yeah. You're going to neglect another primary responsibility, sure. And that is to spend quality time with your family. And therefore, getting that balance right. It's not a crime to say no. You can't be everything to everybody.
Okay, so being a part of the more experienced generation, how would you say it has been to keep up with the great advancements in technology? Like, I think even the younger people today are struggling to keep up, but for you, you seem to have been at that place because you have your podcast, you have your ebook. How did you manage to keep up with the ever-changing technology that there is?
Can I share a secret with you? I have some brilliant young generation kids in my house, My daughter is in brand management, so they make me look very smart. But I've got to always look into the new trends, what's out there, and be relevant. Mm-hmm. Because the content and the substance of my message is still the same. But the way one presents it and the way it's consumed out there by the broader public. People have got options now, and you must be as relevant as possible. The last couple of weeks, I immersed myself in this AI, GPT, chat thing,
ChatGPT,
It's
yes.
amazing. I got nervous. I thought I'm going to be out of a job very soon. This thing is going to write books for other people that doesn't even have half the talent that I have.
Yeah.
But you mustn't see the technology as a threat, but rather see it as an enabler, and put your own identity in that space to make you look, more to enable you to be more efficient and more effective and reach a wider audience with technology.
Ah,
But I also coach millennials. And what I like about the coaching and mentoring route is the mutual learning that takes place. As much as they think I'm this learner, experienced person, they don't know how much they impact on my life because they bring fresh perspectives. Even challenge some of my paradigms. Sometimes, some of the things that I held on so dearly, all of a sudden I realize, no, man, actually it's stupid to do, There's a better way of doing
Yeah.
things.
Sure, that's pretty good. So if there was one piece of advice that you would like to give to your grandchildren, what would you tell them?
I actually published a book called Credibility. The whole thing that kept me going, I think, as I have narrated my life story, was this whole concept of credibility. What I mean with credibility is to stay truthful to yourself, to be the real deal, not to be a fake, not to imitate others. Mikal, you've been endowed with great creative talent, and so have I. And my ticket to the game is Martin Kuscus, not the clone of somebody else.
Yeah.
And the world is yearning for credibility because, we've got a crisis, especially in leadership ranks, where we've got a crisis right over the world in all sectors of society, a crisis of credible leadership.
Sure.
Our leaders are no more trusted, they're no more believed, they're no more respected, they're no more admired, and when they speak, you have your doubts because what they normally say and how it turns out in reality is always at variance with each other. And I'll tell my grandchildren, just be yourself. Be the real deal out there. Maintain your own identity, because the world is looking for genuine and sincere people nowadays.
That's good. So while telling us your story, I think you mentioned about 3 or 4 instances in your life where you were forced to reinvent yourself. What advice would you give to people who are currently going through that change, where they've been put into a new position or new opportunity and they have to now reinvent themselves?
Yeah, when I did my matric, I recall typing was a matric subject those years. People got distinctions in typing. It's non-existent. You were hired as a typist and you were having a nice little office and you will type the CEO stuff with someone's letters and memos and what have you. And so we've seen companies as well, those days there used to be video stores and we used to book in advance to have this movie, to hire it out. Because there's a queue for this new thing. And today, you've got the streaming devices. You get the best movies wherever you are in the world. You don't need to go and queue and become a member of some video store. I used to shop around in malls for the latest, music CDs and so on. When I'm in New York and those places, I mean, there's Virgin Music and all these places. Couple of stores, I go and hunt for music. Those days are gone. Which means, if you don't reinvent yourself, you don't grow, you're gonna die. You're gonna be extinct. And learning is a lifelong process, which means you need to always be a step ahead. Reinventing yourself is actually born out of preparation that you've already done in your life. When I was MEC of Finance, I went through certain basic, fundamental leadership experiences, which is universal in any other thing, any other sphere. They prepared me to become the chairman of a pension fund. They prepared me to become, rigorous in the quality world, where there's also, where reliability is of the essence there. So those principles I had to learn before. So when I came in and reinvent myself, it was just an enhancement of existing skill sets that was already in me. And this is born out of continuous learning every time when something new comes up. What do I need to know about it? So when the opportunity comes, you will not be lost for that opportunity.
Sure.
You'll be able to reinvent yourself.
Sure, that's good. So what practical advice would you give to someone whose career goal is to become a CEO, so that they may improve themselves and correctly undertake that role?
The first question I want to ask them is, why do you want to become a CEO? Because if you don't know the why part of your life,
Sure.
then the title will be a glorified ego trip.
Wow.
You need to ask yourself the question, why would I like to be in charge of this business? What difference can I make? What skill set do I have that can put the business on a higher growth trajectory?
Sure.
If it's just because of the privileges and the position that goes with it, then you're going to miss the mark. Because a higher paycheck can only satisfy you to a certain level. After that, frustration comes in. Disillusionment comes in. And
Sure.
the other thing is, when you aspire to be a CEO, you can't be a leader until you have learned to be a servant. Serve diligently where you are at the moment. Excel in what you've been assigned to do at this point in time. And by so doing, you'll prepare yourself for the next level for your life. But other people are launched prematurely into positions of authority. And very soon, when the pressures comes and the crisis comes, then you realize these people are standing on feet of iron and clay. The foundation is not solid here. So by serving faithfully and excelling in what you do, that firm foundation for you to take on new responsibilities. We all want to go to the top. Don't manipulate yourself. Grow into this thing.
Sure.
And don't be fooled by the position, the power, and the privilege that goes with it, the paycheck. Be informed by the motivation of your heart. Why do I want to do this thing?
That's good. I heard in one of your talks you mentioned that to you CEO stands for Chief Encouragement Officer.
Okay.
Would you like to share what you mean by that?
Well, I was privileged, in my lifetime, Mikal, to be hired as a CEO, but I also sat on the other table to hire other CEOs in some of the companies I've been involved with. And until you've lived it, it's difficult to explain what it is like to become a CEO.
Sure.
Because one moment you're very much elated about your appointment, and once you realize what's waiting for you, and the awesome responsibility on you. So the CEO should be an embodiment of vision, of aspiration, and really inspire people to do better.
Sure.
Now, I've now taken on a total different role, having been through CEO position and hired CEOs. I'm still a CEO, but this time I'm a Chief Encouragement Officer. I don't know about you, Mikal, but in the circles I operate, sometimes one just pick up a sense of a lot of disillusionment, a lot of discouragement going on there, A lot of pressures on a lot of people. If you look at the medical statistics, and I was part of the medical industry for the last 14 years, as I've alluded earlier on, some of the last statistics of the Board of Healthcare Funders, the two fastest growing disease trends in our country at the moment, the usual suspects remain high, like blood pressure, diabetes, and so on. But the fastest growing ones is cancer, and the second one is depression.
Sure.
Psychological disorders. We're a very stressed society.
Sure.
And therefore, why I took on a conscious and deliberate view about being this CEO is, how can I encourage people? Sometimes it's just the lady at the till, at Pick and Pay,
Sure.
who just needs to be encouraged, What time are you going off? What time did you start? No, I started this morning, it's been going on for the last 8-10 hours and so on. And I go home late, just encourage her.
Sure.
Sometimes he's a guy that put in petrol at the, and I'm not talking making hollow promises and just loose talk. Genuine and sincere discouragement, saying, my friend, I've been there. It's a matter of fact, my situation was at some stage worse than yours.
Sure.
You can get out of this.
Wow.
How can I help you?
Sure. That's very good. Wow, that is very good. I think so many people in their life is on that journey to financial freedom.
Yes.
And why do you think so many people fail to reach that financial freedom?
Qualitative decisions are based on qualitative information. And there are just too many quick fixes out there. I don't know about you, but I get it basically daily on my phone, There's now an app, you just put in so much, $250, and this thing is gonna, by next week you're gonna have 100,000 of this, and look at it, so much. This one banked this yesterday, so there's just too many quick fixes floating around there. And I still believe in the conservative view of things like compound interest and so on. You build this wealth incrementally. It's just too good to be true if, a small amount of money will bring you in all these sort of things. We've seen so many pyramid schemes, people's money being robbed and so on. So base your decisions on qualitative information. First, understand what you're allowing yourself into. I, up till this stage, have a very vague idea about Bitcoin. So I've chosen to stay away from it, I heard people make big money there. For them, but so I try and get as much information. But secondly, get it from reputable advice as well. This person must, be able to have a track record. This person must be registered with the requisite authorities and so on. And thirdly, start small. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. And the earlier you start in life, the better, because this miracle of compound interest, you start small and this thing kind of grow, and towards the end, interest on interest, that kind of thing. That is to me. And yes, you need to work according to a budget. And a budget is, you don't run your money in such a way. A budget tells you actually where your money must go. You don't ask at the end of the first week after you go to sale, but where is my money going to? Because you didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
If you've got a plan, then you can ruthlessly follow through with that. And by so doing, you know your limits, what's your appetite for risk, and how far you can push this thing without over-indebting yourself.
That's good. So one question we like to ask every guest that comes on this podcast is, if you lost everything but your mind, so you know everything that you currently know, your experience, your knowledge, but you lost all of your monetary assets, and all you had left was 500 Rand, how would you get back on your feet?
How would I get back on my feet? Well, I will get to my favorite place, Mark and Bean, and buy myself a cappuccino with a 500 rand. And then I will surf the net because they've got free Wi-Fi there. I will surf the net and get myself into. There's so many programs out there that can empower you. Mm-hmm. Some of them at a fraction of 500 rand. I'm perhaps exaggerating here, but like I told you earlier on, I absorbed myself in AI. Find out how can you train yourself. What new skill can you learn that's in high demand for that point in time? And get to grips, because the best investment that you can do is to invest in yourself through education.
Sure, that's good.
And once you have that education, it puts you in a better chance to make yourself marketable and to start all over again. But I will certainly see how I can take my 2 fishes and 5 loaves and multiply it through advancing my skill set and equipping myself to get out of where I am.
Can you share a bit more practical advice on how people can invest in themselves?
There are 2 levels of empowerment. There's a level where you've got external empowerment. You need to subject yourself to learning, teaching, mentoring, and all sort of things. But there's also self-empowerment, where you've got to read things for yourself, find things out for yourself. What you don't know, who are the authorities on that? Set up meetings with them, and engage with these people and learn some of the life lessons from them, so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. And by so doing, learning actually becomes a lifelong process, and you equip yourself actually to a level where you can, any opportunity that comes your way, you're ready to grab that opportunity. You don't, farmer don't wait for the rain to prepare his field. He prepares his field before the rain.
Sure.
And this is, some of us need to start preparing our land and our field before the rain comes, and before we can expect our harvest. And perhaps in your life, this is the time for preparation.
Sure, that's good. So another thing that we like to do on this podcast is we like to ask each guest a hypothetical question. So your question for today is, if you had an endless amount of time and an endless amount of capital, what business would you start and what would you do in that business?
People development. That's my strength. You take me away from people, it's like taking a fish out of water. I'm a very relational person, and if I can start a business, its major focus will be people development. To see to what extent I can, do programs with them, to equip them better, to discover their purpose, and so on. But the people development space is a big industry nowadays, and I think I've got what it takes, to leverage from my life experiences, tap into the new technologies out there, get the best brains like yourself around me with all the technical capabilities. And there we roll it out at speed, because there are two keywords nowadays. It's speed and scalability. At what speed can you roll out this business? Because yesterday's excellence is tomorrow's mediocrity.
Sure. Wow.
The world doesn't stand still for you with that bright business idea. By the time you go to market, it's outdated.
Yeah,
so move out with speed and scalability, but in a spirit of excellence.
Sure.
Woman. I think. I always wanted to be a teacher. You remember, I told you. I always wanted to be a teacher.
So, which aspects of people would you develop?
At this point in time, my heart lies with emerging leaders. I know what it's like to go through trial and errors and making mistakes and so on. And we didn't always have the support systems around us. Remember when I launched out into my first big career move into politics, we were actually part of the team that crafted a new democratic architecture for South Africa. Sure. There were no precedents for this thing. And a lot of the older guys around us also had a late start in life. They had to play catch up, and they didn't have much time to even spend on you, mentoring relationships and all those. They were also still trying to catch up and chase up. That to me is important. That element doesn't get lost.
That's good. So another segment that we have on the show is where our previous guest asks the next guest a question. So our previous guest has asked you, what is your definition of success, and what point in your life did you reach that conclusion?
Well, you're asking me a question like, what was the length of a piece of a piece of string? But my definition of success is to be at peace with who you are, what you've accomplished, without any regrets.
And at what point in your life did you come to that conclusion?
Well, I told you I exited politics. I glibly said because I played too much golf, but by that time I felt what I was supposed to do at that point in time. I had to do. It became a maintenance job, a routine, and so on. And I was looking for the next challenge. I left a very successful run treasury there, and things were the same with the SABS when I left there. And moved on to the next challenge. So success is to be at peace with yourself on what you've done, and be proud of your achievements without any regrets.
May I ask, in your time in the government, how did you escape without falling victim to fraud or bribery?
I'm going to tell you a story quickly. I was newly appointed MEC I was first finance, and they gave me this additional portfolio in 1996, economic affairs as well. Yeah, I became hot property Mikal in the Northwest because I was actually issuing casino licenses. Yeah. That was the days when new casino licenses came out. And I became a bit of a hermit, a very social outcast, because I became very conspiratorial. Whenever you invite me, I wonder what is afterwards. But I didn't see this one coming. A farmer from our hometown in Klerksdorp, well-known businessman, but he was having a big farm and beautiful setup there outside town. He invited me because he wanted to discuss an economic job creation opportunity with me. Now, that's my game. I'm a politician, jobs, those kind of things. And it's at home even in Klerksdorp. I went to his farm. He got me onto a Jeep. And now I was on my way to a funeral of one of my late teachers. So he got me onto his 4x4, and hey, we were enjoying the scenic environment there and so on. And we got onto the stoop, and the scones just landed fresh from the oven, Nice coffee there on the stoop. So why am I here? And he told me about the reconstruction and development program of the government, people center. He crammed the principle, government's economic development program by heart. And he gave it to me, and, he wants to develop this place to do all those things. And one of the things in which we can do is to build a resort here with a casino license. And you are the one. I thought I need to speak to you about it. What's the chances of you getting me a casino license? And he told me about his involvement with some of the previous ministers in government, his friend. They used to hunt together and so on. And Martin, let me tell you, politics has got a very short shelf life. You need to cash in whilst you are there. he said in Afrikaans, kom ons plant 'n boompie. Let's plant a little tree and we'll water the tree, you know. And when you leave one day, the fruits will be nice and ripe and you cannot. It was just between you, me, and the lawyer. We'll set up a blind trust and you can come and pick up the fruits. I just felt so gullible to me, man. I mean, I was only through half a scone, you know. I ended up finishing at least the scone, but I pretended that I just told him, you know, there's a certain process that's going to be followed, and it's going to be advertised in the newspaper, and this is done by the gambling board. They will report their findings to me, and then from there, I'll make a recommendation to cabinet. Just watch the local newspapers. And by the way, this thing of planting boompies, that's not my scene. No, I didn't mean that. And so, no, that's not my scene. Now, if I said yes, that was just 2 years, you know. Said yes by then, I would have reaped rotten fruits, poisonous fruits for that matter. And I wouldn't have sit here and talk to you today from a position not of a holier than thou attitude, but a position of pride in what we've accomplished, through God's grace, what I've accomplished in life to serve my country, my community, and you know, to maintain my good name and reputation in a credible manner. And you can so easily fall prey to that, you know. Once they know your appetite, they're going to feed your appetite. They're going to start with small things, you know, a nice little golden pen, and its cufflinks. Then let's go to Loftus, the box are playing there. And the next thing they tell you, hey, you look so tired, man. We must take you to our game farm for a weekend. We'll fly you down to Hoedspruit and all sort of things. And they will, you know, gradually, you'll feel obligated later on. Because these are nice guys. There are no nice guys in this world. That's not my qualification for dealing with people. So, Mikal?
Yeah.
I can keep you busy with a lot of these stories, but, you know, it's good to talk about, I'm not corrupt. Put the money in front of me. We'll see how it goes. How honest you are.
That's good.
I've been exposed to a lot of money.
Yeah, no, that's good. Okay, so Uncle Martin, would you like to give the people at home a little quote or a piece of motivation that they can take with them for the week?
Good people, wherever you are today, I want to remind you that an opportunity of a lifetime must be taken in the lifetime of an opportunity. An opportunity of a lifetime must be taken in the lifetime of the opportunity. Once an opportunity comes your way, don't procrastinate, don't, you know, delay these things. Take it in the lifetime of that opportunity, because there is something called being too late.
Sure. Wow. That is good. And the final thing that we do to end off the show is we ask our guest one more question. And that question is, what is your success equation?
My success equation? What do you mean by that?
So this podcast is called the success equation.
Yes.
So what would you say, if you could summarize it as much as you can, what is your equation to success?
I'd explained it earlier on, having no regrets, having fulfillment, you know, and being at peace with what you've achieved.
Okay.
What else do you want to hear?
No, so you can just say this.
You want me to write
just summarize
a tagline for your show here?
Yes.
I'll send the invoice later. Let's get done with it.
Yeah.
No. Success is not a destination. It's just a journey. And I want to thank you guys for embarking on this journey. You know, it's not just a once-off thing. And this journey takes you into various avenues. Today you had Martin here. Tomorrow it might be somebody else. And I trust that your lives will also be enriched by these interactions, but your audience as well, that they will tap into the wealth of expertise that you present to them on a regular basis through your podcast here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Uncle Martin.
Thank you.
Wow, that episode was good, guys. And I learned so much from Uncle Martin that I'm going to be applying in my own life. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Next week, we have a mystery guest, Mr. J. He is all about leadership and the importance of leadership and how we can lead ourselves to be better in life. So stay tuned. It's going to be good. See you next week, Monday.